working moms.
Hey, working dads.
Hey, aspiring working parents.
And allies of working parents.
Are you in search of your pillow?
Does it take you 24 hours just to get out the door in the morning?
Are you the family ATM?
Or the family Uber driver?
Are you on a Zoom call for work while carpooling while also watching a practice?
If so, welcome to our world, the Parents at Work podcast.
I'm Lori.
I'm Jason.
We are married.
And we have two wild and crazy redheaded boys.
We're here to shine a light on the roller coaster ride that is working parenthood. I'm a healthcare lawyer and founder of a working parent community called Mindful Return.
And I'm an executive coach with Ready, Set, Launch, LLC. I wrote a cool book called Relationships to Infinity.
And I wrote a cool book called Back to Work After Baby. Hello, everyone. Lori and Jason here, and we are back after a very long hiatus. So, Parents at Work podcast, I feel like we have an inch of dust on our podcast recording mics after this long hiatus. And we're here to just have a conversation today about where the heck we went over the past, say, 18 months since our last interview with the mayor of Washington, D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser. That was a fun episode, and then we fell off a cliff. Jason, where did we go?
Well, Lori, it is great to be back with you with the Parents at Work podcast, and it's nice to be able to pick up where we have left off. Where did we go? I think, where did we go? I think we had some significant mental health challenges with the boys, and you had early stage breast cancer. So I think between those three things, we were occupied with keeping our house afloat.
What was the third thing, Jason? You said mental health challenges and cancer. That shows our state of mind, perhaps. But what was the third?
No, the three. When I say three is child one, mental health, child two, mental health. And then, so that for me, that is three. So mental health is with, and of course, when one child has mental health challenges, that also impacts others in the family. So those three things then impacting our family of four. So,
So I think today we want to unpack some of what has happened with us to help you carry some lessons forward about these mental health challenges. We want to talk about my breast cancer journey a little bit as a public service announcement so that you are more educated and can also save your own life when it comes to this stuff. And then we also want to talk a little bit about sort of how we managed through all of this crisis. We want to talk about how we did work and in some instances didn't do work during these 18 months, and how we've taken care of ourselves. So that's sort of where we're headed in this winding conversation. I want to kick off the part about kid mental health challenges with a note about how important it is to me that we respect some kid privacy, and how important it is to me that we share a little bit more detail than we have about our process of working through these challenges, because we don't want other parents to, one, have to go at it alone, or two, have to recreate wheels and find resources for themselves that we absolutely had no idea existed. So I just want to put out there that I think I personally am trying to dance that line between letting them tell their own stories when they want to tell them, and also viewing this through the parent lens so that we can be helpful. I want to flag one resource that we're going to drop in the show notes that I put together last year, which is called A Map of 14 Mental Health Options for You and Your Kids. And it's on the Mindful Return blog, but we'll link to it. And it was really an outgrowth of me feeling like no one had put a map together of all the different things that we could use as resources when we needed that extra support. So we'll link to that, but over to you, Jason.
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on is this classic thing that we say, oh, you need to get help. And then all of a sudden, people understand what that means. And it is so vague. It's not an action,
Yeah.
because of, and I think we can walk through at least some of the things that we saw, because what still blows my mind is how hard it is to get help, and
Mhm.
then how hard it is to even interpret if that help is actually helping you.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
I feel like we both have these honorary PhDs in mental health advocacy for our family,
Mhm.
because you're on one side trying to figure out, all right, what is the role of what you do,
Mhm.
and how does that actually help with what we have and where we are at that moment in time. And I think the hardest part is when you're in these mental health challenges, you're not fully present. You're not in a place where you can actually receive all this information.
'Cause you're
And
scared. Y Yeah.
when you're scared, you can't think.
Mhm.
And so I'm glad that now that we're in a place where we can reflect on that, articulate options and choices, articulate places that people can go to, because get help doesn't even begin to talk through what people need to do when either your kids are going through a mental health challenge, or your wife just tells you that you've been diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about help, and we're gonna help
All of
about
it.
help.
Yes.
Yes.
I wanna zoom out before we get into some of the things that we found particularly helpful. I want to zoom out and just let everybody know that we have 2 boys. They're currently ages 12 and 14, and somewhere in the midst and muddle of all of this, we've been through 5 years of trying to figure out a diagnosis for one kiddo. We've got lots of neurospiciness in our household. We finally got an autism diagnosis for one of our children after not knowing what the heck was going on for many years. We have called crisis lines. We have had EMTs and psychiatrists, mobile crisis units, police officers, all the things come to our house. It was not really what we were expecting, maybe in our parent journey. And we've had experience with inpatient psych units and residential programs and IOPs and PHPs and the partial hospitalization programs and intensive outpatient programs. And all the things that we didn't know we were gonna get educated on. I just wanted to give you a little snapshot of what this has entailed for us. I'd say, like, our kids are both in a more stable place right now, which is what's allowing us to breathe and to start this up again, but we've had basically 5 years of chaos, people being suicidal, people being aggressive, people not knowing what was going on with their brains.
And to, be transparent, I think that's one of the reasons I leaned into my own ADHD diagnosis. Uh, I had often joked, oh, I'm probably something in and around ADHD, but really never knew what ADHD was in its classic definition of overfocus and underfocus. And I think one of the reasons why, it was fun. I was talking with my therapist and I said to her, I think I have ADHD. She's like, I could. I think one of the reasons why I actually tried to understand it better was the amount of details that we needed to get through. And I think the first go around, when we were going through one of our crisis moments, I just couldn't keep up with the amount of details that were happening just to manage, one of our kids' crises. And
And
I
I
think,
went off the rails because I didn't have a partner who could help with the
yeah,
details, and God bless medication,
yeah,
for really helping. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I think that, on one side, having a stimulant, and finding that right, you know, dosage, along with, okay, we need an Excel file. We need a checklist. We need all right, how are we going to work through this and the blocking and tackling of managing all that. So
It
yeah,
was a whole other job, right? I mean, it
yeah,
was, like, all consuming. It could have been a 24-hour thing. We were trying to fit in a little work here and there, but the number of people we had to contact and the number of people we had to connect with one another and the number of people we had to debrief about everything that had happened with our kiddos. I think one tip that I took from this is to, if you start going down a path where you're seeing a kiddo struggle, is to start a file and just start documenting everything that's happening. Because people will ask you and you'll be like, I don't know, last month this thing happened and I can't remember when and what, because your head just goes to mush when all this starts happening. So start the file and start tracking.
Yeah, I think you did a really great job of tracking the file. And, one of the things I was working on in all of this, and it's funny how it ties back to my book, Relationships to Infinity, where it's all about maintaining the relationships, and you would really know more people than you think you do, is
Mhm,
getting those introductions. And so much, and this bothers me also, so much of the mental health community is being referred in by someone else that they trust.
mhm,
And it's really picking up the phone and saying, all right, who else do we need to be talking to? And who do we need to get in front of? And because of the scarcity of certain types of therapists and the scarcity of certain types of psychiatrists, it was much harder to even get those resources because unless you had a referral from somebody that they knew, either a
mhm.
colleague or a current patient, then in reality, you were just somebody off the street, which I found, that was frustrating. That was really
Yeah,
frustrating.
yeah. I want to go back to the medication point for a moment because you and I have come a long way in terms of
Yeah.
where we started on feeling how we were feeling about medication for our kids, ourselves, etc. And I think in my journey anyway, I've been initially extremely reluctant to have, our kids take any medication. And my opinion on that has evolved a lot over the past couple of years. And the initial experiences that we had with some psychiatrists who I think were used to dealing with very low level anxiety, sort of run of the mill situations, is that we really had to advocate to find specialists who were willing to try different things, and who were prepared to prescribe what would actually work for our kids as opposed to what they were um, comfortable and used to prescribing for the average kiddo who might have some anxiety.
Yeah, and I was in your camp also. I think if you were to talk to me in 2019 or 2020, I'm like, no way ever would I take any kind of medication for, like, what, a psychiatrist? Are you kidding? And then even for my kids, I'm like, no way. And I can't tell you, like, it was, what was it, 2020 or 21 when we finally entered into that realm and started with that. I was like, okay, fine, let's do a little bit. And I think I wish I had known about these DNA tests that
Mm.
exist.
Mm.
We use GeneSight, where essentially you can map. These tests allow for you to map your DNA to 60 available medications to see whether you process it normally, you over process it. And so some of the
Or whether it's just
medications,
not effective for your particular
right?
genetic makeup. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, so I think the first question was yes or no on the medication and getting over that hump. But then there is so much better technology today to map to your specific DNA to say, all right, yes, this medication does certain types of things, but you process it in a way where it's not even useful for you. And
Yeah.
I think we had made, through trial and error, we were on certain medications with the kids where it was a waste of time because they were over processing it. And we switched and it became more effective.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest part in that journey is is it the child? Is it the medication? What's the side effect? It felt like we were sometimes throwing spaghetti at the wall. Uh,
Yes, often. I wanted to just share 2 things that helped me sort of get over my own mental hurdle around, medication, one of which is would you ever say to a diabetic, like, "Oh my gosh, you're so weak for taking insulin?" Like, no, if you have a
Yeah.
medical condition, then and we live in a society that can actually help support your life with that medical condition, why not take it? The other thing that really helped me to get my head around it was if your kid's not alive, they can't possibly work through all of their issues. And so I think one thing that I saw and that we saw is that yes, our children needed to learn certain skills, right? Coping skills and emotional regulation skills. And they did not have access to those skills when they were so dysregulated that they couldn't even participate in therapy. And the medication helped them to regulate in a way that brought them closer to a baseline and allowed them to engage in conversations that were actually productive and like good learning opportunities for them. Um, so I
Yeah.
think those were some of the ways that I changed my mindset around medication to be able to help them, and help them to be more healthy, quite frankly.
Yeah, I what got me towards medication was one of the things that I learned with ADHD is its relationship to anxiety.
Mhm,
And I was like, "Oh my god, I didn't even realize I had anxiety." And what does that look like? And so the more I dove into the neuroscience and our brain wiring and our chemical functions and understanding what the medication did based on what you were presenting, I was like, "Oh, well, this makes sense."
mhm,
And I think 25 years ago, we didn't have that information. I think we had a lot of just like, "Oh, you're just weak, and, go figure it out." And so there's so much more real information on the great things that medications can do to bring you and your kids to a certain level of stability, but that's only part of the work in and of itself. You still need to then work through the other pieces with reliable therapists.
mhm.
But
Yeah,
and it, and it yeah,
I was gonna say, let's pivot over to that conversation about therapists and, a note on the medication. We can drop a link to Gene's site in the, comments. We don't have any affiliation with them whatsoever, but we
right.
found their reports incredibly helpful. It sort of gives you a red light, yellow light, green light for those 60, mental health medications to say, like, does it work or not for your profile?
Yeah.
And really important that you go over the results with a psychiatrist who's trained in reading those. Um, but let's pivot over to therapy. I think my big takeaway from all the research we did into therapists is that dialectical behavioral therapy or DBT therapy is such a helpful model for kids who are neurodivergent and for their families. I feel really well supported by the DBT practice that we go to, in which our children have their own therapist, but we also have a parent coach that allows us to, process what's going on with the kids and gives us tools to regulate our own emotions when we get triggered by the acts and behaviors and feelings of our children. Jason, you want to talk a little bit about the therapy piece?
Yeah, and it's funny when you think about, well, at least when I thought about therapy, and I was casually with a therapist pre-pandemic, and then actually switched therapists during the pandemic. It got me thinking about therapy in a different type of way, and also no different than you go shopping in the grocery store for certain types of things. You go shop for a car. I think that it's also having that relationship with a therapist that you trust that's really important. When we finally found DBT and they explained what DBT was, I was like, "You got to be kidding me! This is it? This is the solution? You're crazy! There's no way we're doing this." At least from my perspective, like, how the hell is this going to work?
And what part of
Uh,
it pushed your buttons, Jason, just to be a little bit more clear for our audience?
the role of, well, that it's really about the parent. That
We're the
I'm like
problem.
I'm like,
Ah!
"I'm not the problem, but my child." And I think that once I owned for myself, the role that I had and modeling the behavior that we were hoping from our kids, I was like, "Oh, this is really sophisticated stuff." But my initial reaction is, are you kidding me? And so I think it was my own journey I'm like, all right, I'm going to show up every week. I'm going to try. I'm going to process this in a way that makes sense. And I think when I began to fully embrace the DBT principles is where I started to notice changes in the kids. And I
You
was like,
mentioned change, and DBT is really all about acceptance
yeah,
of what is and change. And you can't really get to that change piece until you accept that you have a role to play and your kids have a role to play in getting toward the change.
yeah. And what I started to realize was that the more that I allowed for things to, there would be times where, the kids might blow up and then I'd blow up.
Uh huh.
And
Uh huh.
it would get worse. And I was like, because they're making me mad. And why can't they just be calm and all the different things? And then even having the skill set that DBT teaches, like, wait a minute, when this happens, why are you blowing up? What's going on inside of you that's making you uncomfortable? And
Hmm.
the more I became comfortable in understanding what was uncomfortable for me, I didn't need to respond. And the more that I responded less was counterintuitive. I'm like,
Yes.
I'm the
Yes. Do
parent. I
less.
know all the things. What the heck? And being able to in that moment just let the kids have those uncomfortable feelings
Hmm.
and let it pass and realize that the struggle sometimes just needs to happen and I don't need to have a role in it other than to be present.
Yeah.
So
And I keep coming back to the mantra that I've learned from DBT too, which is, would you like to be right or would you like to be effective? And I've
yeah,
learned that I really do want to be effective, but sometimes there's a little part of the ego that really wants to be right. And so
yeah.
focusing on the effectiveness can help. Oh, go ahead.
One more thing I want to hit on with DBT, which was a big self realization in all of this. I used to be a huge catastrophizer where I would see my child have really big emotions, and then I would play out 10 years from now, they're in an orange jumpsuit somewhere because of, how dysregulated they were. And what DBT really allowed for me to understand is what do they need now?
Hmm.
What do they need right now? What
Hmm.
can you give them right now to be able to hear them out, either spoken or unspoken? And that actually calmed me down. That
Yeah.
calmed
I
me
mean,
down.
that is the definition of mindfulness, right? I mean, I run a program called Mindful Return. It's how can we stay in the present
Right.
and really just focus on what is happening right in front of us. I want to talk a little bit about two more topics before we pivot over to breast cancer chaos. One topic is how far and wide we had to go to get the right resources for our children. And two, the battle that we had to fight with insurance to get them to cover some of
Right.
this stuff.
Right.
So I mean, we spent a lot of one of the reasons why we were not doing this podcast is that we were spending a lot of time traveling to places like California and Utah and even into Maryland, like back and forth every day. And so I want to point out the fact that there are so few high quality resources for residential programs, for example, on the East Coast and in our vicinity, and so few that are covered by insurance and the like additional job that we had to do just to get any of this reimbursed and that we're still on the path to trying to get reimbursed.
So much is said about the need for more mental health resources, and there's not. And really, I would put residential facilities really into two categories. One is this whole set of residential facilities that I consider like kid prisons, where it's awful. I mean, all they're doing is creating a space where they're not getting help. They're essentially being restricted on all these different kinds of things. And because they're covered by insurance, so they have a certain branding, they call themselves a residential facility. And there's not a program behind it to be able to not only get them to stabilize, but get them to another path. So
I
there's,
I want to tell one quick story here. Sorry to interrupt, Jason, about one particular residential facility, I won't name any names, but one of our sons was there for a brief period of time, and we were actually told at one therapy session, "Gosh, I wish our staff were trained in de-escalation techniques." I'm like, "You're a residential program. What do you mean your staff aren't trained in de-escalation techniques?" And so, I will put a plug in for not-for-profit organizations that run these programs.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't wanna badmouth anyone, but, the not-for-profit programs that we found, and we have an N of only a handful, have been, much higher quality, and much more, specialized and
Yeah.
able to focus on the real needs of our kids. Back over to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what I think does work are not only the not-for-profit ones, but the ones that are, either owned or operated by therapists themselves
Mhm.
because, they have a level of expertise and actually solve the problem.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of them are out west. They're not in, the Mid-Atlantic, or at least the ones that, you know, we had noticed. And I think on one side, I was thinking, knowing what ed consultants do now, I probably would have gone earlier to an ed consultant, but
Mhm.
we didn't
We
know.
didn't know. Yeah.
We didn't know what they didn't do, and I think they also are quite valuable in those relationships and understanding what would be a fit for you.
And by
But
ed consultant, Jason means an education consultant with whom you can consult about your schools, of course, where your
yeah,
kid might need to go to elementary school or high school or middle school, whatever, but also on residential treatment programs, on wilderness programs, on all of the things that people they throw the word at you, but you don't really know what they are. The education consultants, they actually know the staff at the various places and they can pair your child with a setting that is going to be the most helpful for your child.
and what I think was awful in all of this, when you look at what's available, is that all of a sudden, when you turn 13, you have all these options and choices. But if you're 12, if you're 11, if you're 10 years old, there is such a limit of
Mhm.
options of residential facilities that drove me crazy.
Mhm.
That this age limit of 13 exists, where all of a sudden it's okay to be 13 and dysregulate, but you can't be under 13 and dysregulate because
Yeah.
there are just so few options. And again, that's something that I want to just call out that there is such a need for that for kids in earlier in their life. They have those mental health needs too.
Yeah, so on
And
to
I
insurance.
Oh
Let's
my
talk about the
goodness.
insurance battles.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, first of all, most of what we've done in the DC area has not been covered by insurance when it comes to, like, the DBT practice and that sort of thing. So, like, the fact that we are even able to talk about that, it shows what a privileged position that we are in. Um,
yes. And I think that the hard part with insurance, I love that movie Incredibles where Mr. Incredible is working for an insurance company. He's like, and I didn't tell you about Form XYZ, and I didn't tell you that you need to go ABC. And the more that, insurance was either delaying or not, getting back to us, I kept having it in my mind. I'm like, okay, um, where's Mr. Incredible or Mrs. Incredible that will help us in all of this? And so, Lori has done an incredible job in managing all of the documentation and the submissions and all the kinds of things. And me, I was on LinkedIn. I was
mhm,
on LinkedIn looking at who was working at these places and who could I talk to directly, because it's that level of advocacy that you need to do to be able to say, listen, we need this. This is
mhm.
medically relevant and it's covered by the insurance that we're paying for.
Yeah.
And that was exhausting. That was exhausting.
I wanna
So,
teach everyone a term that I think is important to know, which is single case agreement. Um, our one of our sons, the one who was diagnosed last year with autism, is at a program that is specifically for kids with level 1 autism, and they don't have that type of program anywhere near where we are or even in network with our insurance company. And so we were ultimately able to get put in place a single case agreement, which is where the insurance company is willing to pay for an out of network service. We're talking about a service that's like, I don't know, $2,500 a day or something. It's not something that the average person
Yeah.
or most, people in the United States can afford.
I'm
And
going to repeat, $2,500 a day
per day.
as on
Yes.
the MSRP, 2,500
Yes.
a day.
A
That's
day.
$2,500 a day.
Yeah. It's
So
insane. Yep.
not only is that service needed, it is unattainable.
Hmm.
It is
If you're not a billionaire, forget it.
yeah.
Yeah. So we entered into a long battle with our insurance company to prove to them that there was nothing that they could provide that was going to be the right fit for our child and that they needed to cover this outside of our usual plan. And ultimately, after months of fighting, we were victorious in this and it was a slog and it still didn't cover everything. Um, but I just wanted to put a plug in for that. The other thing that I'll note, and we don't have to go down this path, but um, if you if your school has not been particularly helpful with you and your child in getting their needs met, and for example, emotional disturbance, mental health challenges are a reason for an IEP, and your school won't give it to you, find an education lawyer because there are ways to get these programs outside of your school reimbursed by the school district if the school district is not cooperating in helping your children get access to a free and appropriate public education. So just side note there.
Yes. And, I think each family has their own approach. I mean, Lori and I grew up in public schools.
Mhm.
We were hoping the same for our kids. And just one of the things that I've just starting to realize the more and more I talk with other parents and families across the country is that public schools, they're just not doing enough for the neurodiversity
Yeah.
and the neurodiverse community. So, yeah, but to each family, it's your own option and choice. But I just want to echo what Lori is saying that if you don't feel like you're getting what you need, do seek an education lawyer. It's a wonderful way to approach to get what your kids need.
Yeah. Okay, I wanna pivot into the breast cancer conversation, and I wanna start off, since we were talking about insurance, with an observation. Every single little thing got covered in my breast cancer situation. I just wanna point out, and I'm very grateful to the insurance company for that, and I wanna point out the massive difference between how we have to approach insurance when it's a mental health issue versus a physical health issue. The physical health stuff is easily covered. The mental health conditions, there's so much fighting that still needs to happen, and that is disappointing. So, I am
Yes.
not here to complain about insurance's coverage of my breast cancer journey because that for me has been flawless. I know that is not the case for everyone. I recently learned about a woman who 36 hours before her breast reconstruction surgery found out from the insurance company that they were not going to cover a $14,000 part of the procedure that would allow to re-innervate her nerves in her breast when she had the surgery done. And she found out about this, right on the eve of surgery. It's not an okay practice to throw that sort of thing at someone. And P.S., why wouldn't you cover giving the woman back the ability to feel her breasts again? So, anyway, off of the soapbox about insurance, back to breast cancer. Jason, how do you want to start this breast cancer conversation?
We were in the car driving when you got the phone call. When we
Yeah.
talked to your oncologist,
No, it was a
eh,
radiologist, but yeah.
radiologist, yeah.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then and then we were also able to talk to your oncologist. We spoke to multiple people in the car.
Yeah.
Um,
Breast
and
surgeon, yeah.
yes,
Um,
breast surgeon. And I heard the word cancer. I heard that it was early. And, and I think anytime you say the word cancer, it's scary.
it's terrifying. Yeah.
It's very, very scary. And what we had already gone through with the boys, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I'm like, you have got to be
You're
kidding me.
kidding me. Yeah. I mean, I've been telling the joke this year that there's nothing like a good case of breast cancer to get your mind off the fact that one of your children is away in Utah at a residential program. So it's been a wild ride, but I thought I might tell a little bit about how I got to the point of the diagnosis because I think it's just really important as a public service announcement for everybody to know how you can get this early detection. And then if there are other questions you want to ask me, Jason, I'm an open book on this. Um, so about a year and a half ago, I listened to the We Can Do Hard Things podcast where Amanda Doyle was talking about her breast cancer diagnosis and the fact that she had very dense breasts, and it was the dense breast tissue that caused her to have the elevated risk, and the process she went through of figuring out that she had a diagnosis. And I thought to myself, huh, I think that my mammogram results say at the bottom, you have dense breasts. And therefore, there's always this little asterisk that's like, and therefore the results of this test may be inconclusive given your breast density. And I hadn't really ever paid too much attention to it before, but I reached out to my primary care doctor and said, hey, I have dense breasts. Do you think I should get some additional testing outside of mammograms? Because mammograms are notoriously not good at picking up breast cancer in people who have dense breasts. And she wrote back and was like, nah, I think you're fine. And I wrote back and said, I don't know. Maybe you should listen to this podcast. And, we can talk about whether I need some additional testing. So she did, in fact, read the transcript of the podcast, which I really give her credit for. And she said, okay, we'll do additional testing. And by additional testing, I mean requesting either an ultrasound or an MRI. And so I went to my next mammogram. I also got an ultrasound. And in that experience, they called me back for more testing. They smushed my breast around more in some uncomfortable machines. And then they said that they found something that they believed was between, get this, between 5 and 95% chance that it was cancerous. I was like, somewhere between 5 and 95. Okay. And they weren't able to determine whether it was or wasn't without a biopsy. And so I had an extremely traumatic biopsy experience, which I'm not going to get into in this episode, but we can talk about it later. Um, and after the biopsy, that's when the radiologist called and said, hey, we found cancerous tumors. And the good news is that it was stage 0. It was still in my milk ducts. They hadn't left. And then I went through the process of deciding what type of surgery to get. One thing on breast density that I want to make sure everybody knows is that there are 4 different categories of breast density: A, B, C, and D. A and B, you don't have dense breasts. C and D, you have dense breasts. Category D is the one where you have extremely dense breasts, and therefore your risk of breast cancer is much higher than the rest of the population. So find out from your physician, because they don't tell us directly whether you have C or D, whether you are C or D. And if you're in category D, go get some extra testing. Um, I had surgery. I had a double mastectomy with deep flap reconstruction, meaning they removed all of my breast tissue and replaced my breast tissue with abdominal tissue. So basically, they, made a big incision in my stomach. They did microsurgery to reattach all of the little veins and all of the things in my breast. And I was able to have a nipple sparing mastectomy because the cancer hadn't gotten anywhere near my nipples. Um, and between the time that I got the diagnosis, I believe it was like April 4th or 5th of this year, and the time that I had the surgery, May 14th, the tumors that they found had tripled in size. They were 1 millimeter at the biopsy and 3 millimeters when they were taken out. And so I say that just to say, like, the situation going on in your breast can change rapidly over the course of a couple of months. And it's really important to stay on top of advocating for the right preventive testing for yourself.
And the courage you showed throughout all of this um, was just amazing. And how step by step, even though scary as hell, you went through it in a way that showed the amount of strength you have.
Mm.
So I want to call that out. Also, want to give a shout out to Amanda Doyle and the We Can Do Hard Things podcast because I live vicariously through the We Can Do Hard Things podcast because I'm always getting your cliff notes.
Yes.
But thank you, Amanda Doyle, for sharing your own journey, which then inspired Lori and essentially was able to go through a life saving procedure. So, and as I watched you go through these things, I was also stunned by the lack of information that is available as you're describing breast density of A, B, C, and D. And as I started to talk to other women about your journey, and certain women say, "Oh, I haven't gotten a mammogram in a couple of years," and finally, I just said, "Well, you get your goddamn mammogram." And it's funny. I was out trick or treating with and I saw one of the moms I had spoken to several months ago. She's like, "I got my goddamn mammogram." I said, "Good for you."
Yes, yes.
And so, but it's still amazing when I'm sharing Lori's journey with other women that either they know someone that has had breast cancer,
Mhm.
uh, but there's a whole set of women that don't know whether their tissue is A, B, C, and D. And
Mhm,
I th-
mhm.
and so when we think about women's health, there's just so much more education and awareness that needs to happen. And I'm hoping that for those that are listening to this that have an important woman in their life or women in their life, that we talk about this more
Yeah.
because this when you screen for it and you get the right test or a series of tests. I mean, I hope one day we can just have one test that can it doesn't, regardless of your density of your tissue, but we're not there yet.
No,
um
and one day it's in the works right now, Jason. One day there will be a breast cancer vaccine. I am
yeah,
confident, and
yeah,
the vaccine researchers are working on that. I wanted to thank Amanda as well. I had the like awesome privilege of having a chance to meet her during this journey. And Amanda Doyle is as beautiful a human and real and authentic in person as she is on the show. Also want to give a shout out to Dr. Dela Cruz over at Georgetown, Lucy Dela Cruz, who was both Amanda and my breast surgeon. She is phenomenal. She is the most compassionate and brilliant and competent breast surgeon ever. And the team that MedStar Georgetown put around me to deal with this really, really helped me. I mean, I had Dr. Dela Cruz, I had Dr. Fan was my breast surgeon. There was a social worker who connected me to a bunch of resources, including a nutritionist, including a therapist who specializes in people who have cancer. I mean, I felt completely supported and really wish that this sort of team of care and the coordination of care that I received at Georgetown MedStar is something that happened everywhere because I know it doesn't. I felt really lucky. The other thing I want to say is that I felt so amazingly supported by my community in this time. I'm part of a book club and we've been together for almost 21 years now. And, the book club put together the Sign Up Genius, and people brought meals and they came over and did laundry, and like that power of community in this really challenging time was something that gave me strength and allowed me to go from day to day and recover from this. Um, Another thing I wanted to say is just the journey of telling your children about hard things that are going on in your life. So we have, these two boys, and I needed to convey to them that I had this thing and also didn't want them to be terrified. And, we ended up, our older son, who, was with a therapist when we told him, I think that was really helpful. And then for our younger son, I led off by saying, I'm not going to die. And I have this diagnosis. And his two questions for me were, are you sure you're not gonna die? And am I gonna get it? And his "Am I gonna get it?" question wasn't like, "Is it contagious?" It was more along the lines of, "When I turn 46, am I going to get breast cancer?" And we were able to say to him, "We're sure that mommy's not going to die from this. Like, we're all going to die one day, but not from this. And number two, like, no, you're not likely to get breast cancer. And he was like, because boys can get breast cancer, mommy. So he was sort of up on that. Um, but I think we were able to reassure him that, like, this was, we don't know why this happened. That was another, like, big mental struggle that I've gone through this year, which is, what did I do to myself to cause myself to get breast cancer? And I had to learn that that is a narrative that is, one, not going to help me ever, and two, it's a question I'm never going to have an answer to. And when I could say, "Don't know, fluke of nature, any environmental thing could have happened, who knows?" I was able to move on from it a bit because I wasn't getting wrapped up in, like, the 27,000 reasons why I might have brought this on myself, which is not true at all.
And, you go through the range of emotions, uh, in having the diagnosis and having the surgery, and so it is entirely normal to have those things, and it I think that's so wonderful why Georgetown also has a social worker and a therapist, because there are certain things that happen, when you're diagnosed with breast cancer or other cancers. And I'm so grateful that Georgetown has built an integrated team
Mhm.
together. And my hope is that everybody can and should have that type of care when they have to go through something like this. I mean, you know, we both love Georgetown anyway. You're Georgetown Law. I'm a Georgetown MBA, and
Yeah,
now
Hoyas.
go Hoyas. So, but
Oh, and
go ahead.
I forgot the PT piece of it. Like,
Yeah.
I, have been very diligent about going to PT after the surgery and, physical therapy, and the the team at Georgetown has physical therapists who are specialists in helping people after a double mastectomy and after these types of surgeries, and so I love that you have people who, like, really understand what you need in the aftermath of this type of treatment.
And when we talk about the treatment itself, and then you come home,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you come home a couple days after, well, your surgery was 8 hours or 10 hours or however long,
10, 12, somewhere in there, yeah.
and I just want to say that, this type of surgery, and then you come home, you need a lot of help. Not like H with a big H, with uh,
Yes, a big
yeah,
H should help, yes.
and I mean, there were so many people in and out of our house in like the 6 weeks following your surgery, not just with the meals, but also like doing laundry. And like it was because you were in a place where, and I know you were frustrated with, like, because you want to be out and moving, you want to be doing all
Yes.
the things. I'm gonna walk, and I'm like, all right, rest. And so the having, not only, your parents down to, those initial weeks to go through the daily care of a post-breast surgery, all the different things that we don't need to get into, but, luckily there's YouTube videos on, how to do certain things. Um, I counted that I probably needed to write somewhere around 55 thank you notes.
Yes.
55 thank you notes
Yeah.
from people that had delivered meals, people that had stayed with us, people that
Yeah.
had were helpful. And what's wonderful, when you ask for help, you had found this wonderful group in the DMV. For those that are not in the DMV, that's District, Maryland, and Virginia, not the Department of Motor Vehicles,
Yes.
called DMV Breasties. And then there's all this gear that you were able to get specifically for recovering from breast cancer, and grateful to all of the women before you that donated to DMV Breasties,
Yeah,
and then we were able to pass that along to. There's just too many
other
people,
people.
too
Yeah.
many women getting breast cancer,
1 in
and
8. We are a 1 in 8 club. It is, the worst club full of the best people.
yeah.
Jason, I'm feeling like we've just dumped a lot on them in terms of what we, have been through over the past 18 months. I'm feeling like maybe we wrap this conversation and we come back and we do the next episode really around how we manage to work as as we're navigating the chaos, and also what we specifically did to take care of ourselves, because those are really meaty and important conversations, and I don't want to just like throw them in a few minutes at the end. So how about we sign off, we wish them well until next time, and then we pick up with that continued conversation very soon.
And I think what you're talking about makes sense in doing another segment on that. I just want to close with that we all need community,
Hmm.
and community is so important in times where you are struggling. And I can't say enough for the community that we built, not knowing that we would need them for these types of things, and that each of us is worthy of help, and each of us is worthy of asking someone else, can you lend a hand? So I want to, as we end this particular portion, I just want to talk about that we all need community. You're
Mm.
worthy of community, and to think of your community. And I'm thankful and grateful for the community we have, and I'm thankful for you.
Yeah,
So,
I'm thankful for you, Jason.
yes.
I want to close by saying that it is never too late to pick up on something that you've put down. We put down the podcast for 18 months, and now we're back, and we're ready to continue to share our experiences, to bring in amazing guests who are working parents doing all sorts of awesome things. And we wish you a really happy new year. We're excited to kick off this new iteration of the podcast with you. Thanks for listening today.
Thanks,
Got
everybody.
this. Bye, everyone.